Well, hello! We are going to do a kit review for the first time in a very long time of Tamiya's, what is this, 35381. Now, I have lots of thoughts on this because I did just get, well, I'm almost finished building that, which is buddy build with Bruce the Model Noob and Panzermeister 36. I'm like 2 years behind, but whatever. So here it is. This is the later variant of Panzer IV L70A with the hull extensions, and it's got some different stuff than this exact one, but it's real close. And I just happened to have given into a buddy build on said subject when I finally heard about this. I've been a little in the dark, so I was like, well, I'll finish that one. But then I basically bought this because I had such a miserable time building this thing that I was like, I wonder what it would be like to have that nice feeling and make a dumb looking L70A. It's been a while since I've done this, so I'm going to try to make this as simple and quick as and concise as it can be, more so than quick. Interestingly here, it looks like they have spots for 5 return rollers, and they're having you remove the middle one, which means that in a late Panzer IV thing, you would remove these two and leave that one. So this hull is set up for J stuff, and that's like the first step. They do have the correct return roller mounts, which Evan pointed out. The one-piece bogies, all the standard Tamiya Panzer IV stuff. It looks like four steel wheel fronts, and then normal wheels in the back. Very simplified rear poly caps. Super simple stuff. Now I am going to do these link and length on this one. I didn't do them on the Panzer IV, but I'm going to do them on here just because I might as well if I'm going to do it like a review. Very simplified fenders, like that whole piece is way different than the way Dragon did it. This is interesting. These are 4, essentially think of them like track pins that stick up through the back of the engine deck or were welded to it and hold wheels between the two. Tamiya has done this by having 2 pins connected to one thing, like a little, almost like a socket you plug in, whereas Dragon just had you do gluing pins into it, which I've broken 3 of the 4 thus far. Tools, simple. Apparently no mention of the C-hooks on this one either. Same tool arrangement as it is on the Dragon one, which means you'd have to drill out these Type 1 handles. There's actually Type 1, Type 2, and what I call Type 3. The controversial breech assembly is a aftermarket part, like they did with their Panther D, but the gun is slide molded. This is what I'm really looking forward to, which is the roof, because I really had a hell of a time with my Dragon one. It looks like their hinges are possibly workable and only 1 major piece, whereas the Dragon ones are 4 or 5 a piece, and I didn't get to make them right. Still have like the goofy Tamiya, like the pedestal for the figure. And then, yeah, the PE Toma, whatever they're actually called, shields. So, nothing terribly complicated. One last thing I wanted to mention about the instructions is that this front return roller has a tab on it that you're not supposed to remove, because it locks into a certain spot in the track so that you have it at the exact right spot for the sag, and I'm going to try that and see how it goes. I think it's interesting. I don't think I need to do it, but I'm curious to see how much easier it makes things. Now, first thing we'll look at is the hull tub. Here's those spots for where you remove these 2 for a late J and this one for an earlier. That's how you can mount the return roller spots on. So that's interesting, but otherwise there's not much there. There's the little spots for the fuel port, or ports. These Sprue, I'm not going in particular order. We got figure, shirts and brackets, and the gun cradle. There's not a lot I can say about these. I haven't actually done this on the Dragon one. Their new figure guys do look pretty good. This is one from the Panzer IV. So yeah, they're pretty interesting. Yeah, but it's simple. We'll see how they handle these shirts in, because on the Dragon ones you have to like poke holes in the mesh and then like use a jig to clamp the shirts in together. So that whole thing's going to be kind of a mess. But there ain't really a whole lot to look at in this sprue. This is the primary superstructure, which if I've seen around, and which does have some pretty cool texture on it. I'm not huge on texturing 35th scale models, but it does look really interesting. It's on all of the plates, so like on the rear plate as well. I don't think that's a very interesting way to do the engine deck, because all of the doors are already integrally molded, which is kind of meh. Same with like these guys here. I'm not real crazy about all of these doors being molded in. Like, why would you do that? But we shall see. Also, this is just like an indent where here's the Dragon kit, and it's like an actual port. So I'm curious how that's going to look in the end. I guess you couldn't mold this open, or model this open. Interesting. Real quickly, these are your double suspension sprues, bump stops, standard wheels, final drives, nothing particularly interesting. Some stuff you need doubles of, like the jack clamps and stuff, but nothing really worth talking about. This is the roof and the mantlet, some tools. That's worth looking at. So these are type 1 clamps on the wire cutter, so I probably can't use or have to drill out, at least for my personal preference. Same with this. They look good, it's just you have to either drill them out or find a way to make them usable. Texture on there is pretty good too. Spare tracks, more tools. This has spring clamps, so this is okay. This would have a spring clamp, so this is okay. Actually, this one would have a type 3, like the Panzer IV style, so he should be alright as well. The only ones that really aren't are these type 1s. But yeah, I mean, the Bosch light, everything looks clean and good enough, I guess. It's always a little simplified with Tamiya, but it's pretty good simplified. And lastly, 2 of these. This will be our suspension that we'll be using primarily. I think this might be where the steel wheels are, or they're on the other one. These are also standard wheels. Lots of little fiddly shirts and bits, the shirts and brackets. That's a track pin return thing for the lower hull. And like, so the main reason in here, in these little holes here, they are just indents. They are not hollow. On Dragon tracks, they are hollow. This is a Dragon Type 3A. Here you can see, hopefully, through that little hole here. And on these, it's just an indent. I have a run of Panzer 3-4 tracks up against the wall in this room, because of course I do. And all we're talking about is this hole here. So this is a Hammerstollen. This is the hole that it goes into. So that is not, you can't put your hand through it. You know, if it was a real track, and all of them you can. So you know, is it worth not using the tracks because you don't have a Hammerstollen hole? It seems a little silly to me, but so this time I'm going to do it. I replaced them on the 4F because I just did. So that's really all that's wrong with them. So these are Type 7s. They have a solid guide horn anyway, so you don't need to worry about that. Plus, on the 4F, they had hollow guide horns. They just didn't have hollow Hammerstollen holes. So, you know, there's always something. So that's it, essentially. So this thing was $37 from Scale Hobbyist, which I thought was unbelievably cheap. That's why I bought it. This thing is like $90 now, this old Dragon one. So I don't want to go into too much stuff about it, but because I want to do a comparison when they're done. It was warped, there's gaps, it's clearly sort of an afterthought kind of kit. It does look neat, it does look like an L70A, but it's been really quite awful, and I will get to that very soon in a after action on this thing. All I have to do is basically the wheels and the tracks and the shirts, which I haven't quite done yet. I haven't built this yet, but my prediction is, yeah, I would recommend getting this over the Dragon ones because this thing is half the price, and it will be much less of a headache. The only thing is, you know, you're not going to put in these separate brake hatches or these doors or like a lot of different stuff that you individually do on Dragon, but more than likely this will be the proper choice. It is the earlier style of L70A, but Dragon does one of those too.